Ray Dalio tells us that we are one step away from a civil war. Do you think that's true? Well, let's unpack the data. And oh, by the way, let's see who else is saying that. Coming up. I'm LYNETTE Zang, Chief Market Analyst here at ITM Trading, a full-service physical gold and silver dealer. And let me tell you, this is the moment that I have been working for my entire life, and be so grateful that you and I can own physical gold and physical silver, because that's what you need in what lies in our, unfortunately, very near future. In Ray's latest book, he talks about the rising risk of civil war. And here are the 6 stages. This is a repetition of history, so we know what's likely to happen. And as he's examining the breakdown of our civil structure, I examine the breakdown of our monetary system, and frankly, they parallel each other. Let me show you what I'm talking about. And on this one, you want to watch the whole thing. Let's get started. Because I'm going to show you that Ray Dalio is right, and I'm also going to show you how close we are to this war. First, he says, what is obvious from looking at many cycles of rises and declines of different historical cases is that there are a combination of, 1, financial problems due to not having enough money that lead to large deficits, high taxes, and a lot of money printing and high inflation. So our national debt just topped 30 trillion. We can see that in this graph of the money supply, as well as what's happening with inflation. We now today, it came out that inflation topped 7.5%. This is from last month when it hit 7%. It is going higher. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. And number 2, large wealth and value gaps in which people are more willing to fight for what they want than to compromise. Well, let's see, where have we seen these large gaps in income and wealth equality? We've been talking about this in this relentless march ahead. And what happened last year? Well, the Capitol insurrection. And they're saying that more political extremism and violence could be on the horizon in 2022. Telling you this is a pivotal year. We need to have everything in place. When is the time to get prepared? Before you need to be prepared. This leads to some sort of fighting for control rather than compromising according to the rules, which is a civil war, though these fights can be more or less violent. Notably, when that happens at the same time as there are foreign powers that are becoming strong enough to challenge the leading world power, read China, read Russia, really. Let's see. That is encountering this civil war dynamic, it's an especially risky period. That is the period I believe we are now in, and I 100% agree with him. But I'm not the only one that agrees with him. A key CIA advisory panel member also agrees with him that we are headed toward war and that the U.S. is no longer a democracy, but an anocracy. Well, what's an anocracy? An anocracy or semi-democracy is a form of government that is loosely defined as part democracy and part dictatorship, and it is often being vulnerable to political instability. We're not a democracy anymore. Been talking about that for a while. I was saying it's fascist. I think it's a combination, but we have not been a democracy officially since January of 2020 actually, or March of 2020, when all of these mandates started coming down. That's the dictatorship that they're talking about here. Can you see this shift? Because it's critical that you pay attention and you recognize it. Your life, your family's life, your livelihood depends on being prepared for this. And this has already happened. It's not something that I'm waiting for. I don't think Ray is really waiting for it either. Certainly the CIA knows that it's already happened. So a classic marker on being in stage 5, the last stage is stage 6, so that's why he said we're one step ahead, is the loss of borrowing and spending power, which is the triggers for going into stage 6. Now, you might say, but there's all of this liquidity around. Well, look at the deficits. Now, this is just through October 2021, which is when the U.S. government's fiscal year ends, and we know that the deficits have grown even wider since then, and most likely will continue to grow. At the same time that foreigners are cutting back from holding treasury bonds. Well, that's not a good thing, because then, of course, what happens is that the Federal Reserve, who actually started buying the U.S. Treasury bonds in 2002, the end of 2002, look at how many more they've been buying. And though they've started talking about stopping buying back in October, November, they plan on continuing to buy until March. They also talk about wanting to be nimble. They're not showing that they're very nimble. They've made a plan. They're sticking to it, regardless of what's happening with inflation. Remember, do as I say and not as I do. You pay attention to what they say and then you look at what they do. And is there a lie going on in there? Yes. When their actions or their words are not supported by their actions, they're lying. I mean, that's true for everybody and everything. So, one of the pieces that Ray looks at to determine where we are and why he believes we're in stage 5, what a society spends money on matters. When it spends on investment items that yield productivity and income gains, it makes for a better future than when it spends on consumption items that don't raise productivity in income. And we've talked about the different kinds of debt that there is. So there is self-liquidating debt. You take out a loan to build a business. The business then generates income to pay off that debt. Versus non-self-liquidating debt. And that's what he's referring to here. So you take on that debt and you consume it. Well, let's take a look at that, because gosh, corporations, as we know, spend more money on share buybacks as well as dividends. That is consumption. They're not taking all of those gains or very many of those gains, and we'll see more about that in just a minute. And they're not putting this back in to expand their businesses, hire more people, build products, right? So this is all consumption items. And one of the big consumption items is how much these corporations spend on lobbying our politicians. In fact, they're coming out with a corporate lobbying ETF because they seek to profit from influencing politicians. You can't make this stuff up. I'm telling you, Wall Street is about making new products. At the same time, Credit Suisse yacht loans now exceed $1 billion. So what are the wealthy doing? They too are consuming. They're selling, we know they're liquidating their shares and they're buying stuff, whether it's yachts or whether it's gold, hard assets, movable wealth. That's real. Real hard assets. But let's just look at the components of our GDP. Gross domestic product, which is all the money that flows through the system. Most of it, as you can see, is consumption. Personal consumption is roughly 70% of the gross domestic product. And another 5% of it is in government consumption expenditures. Only this very little bit is in private investment. And most of that from last year was based on stimulus, right? Giving money to the people. Maybe they didn't really need it to pay their bills, so they went and bought meme stocks or other things like that. Now, what I would like to point out to you is that for 2021, the GDP was $22,994 billion. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. The U.S. federal debt just hit 30 trillion. So our debt is now more than 100% of our GDP. That's all the money that flows through the U.S. economy. That's not a good thing. That's a third world thing. And we're supposed to be the world reserve currency. But let's keep going, because here, another piece is you've got to take a look at populism and extremism. Populism is a political and social phenomenon that appeals to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are not being addressed by the elites. Have we not seen a major rise in populism, particularly since 2008? It typically develops when there are wealth and opportunity gaps. Do you think we might have a few gaps in there? But here's the key. The more that populism and polarization exist, the further along a nation is in stage 5 and the closer it is to civil war and revolution. Now, everybody wants to know, when is this going to happen? When? Well, timing is the biggest challenge for any technician. But you can see the patterns. And so even though I cannot tell you it'll be Tuesday morning at 8:35, and I will be just as surprised as you will when it happens, but I won't be shocked because we've been watching this evolve. And, people will say, oh, she always talks about the same things. Well, that's because we have the same issues. When do you want to be prepared? You need to see these nuances. And I 100% agree with Ray, and what he's looking at are repeatable patterns. And look at the Developed World Populism Index. Wow, it is now at the highest level and maybe even higher since this goes to 2017 than it was back in the 30s. Let's see, who came into power? Oh, Hitler. This is the kind of environment that positions, more than a civil war. And you need to keep watching because we're going to keep going through this. And for the demagogues, that's exactly the tinder they need in order to inflame a society. And if you look at what's happening right now, everybody's really scared, nervous. Everybody's on edge. And there are things that are happening to create this civil war. And I'm so sorry to see this in my lifetime. But this is what I was born to show you. So I just have to. Because part of what comes up and creates that friction, we go into class warfare. Stage 5 is class warfare intensifies. And we have to come together in community because we cannot allow this kind of history to repeat itself. During times of increased hardship and conflict, there is an increased inclination to look at people in stereotypical ways as members of one or more classes, and to look at these classes as being either enemies or allies. And I hate to say, and I think you can see for yourself, that that division has been really supported and encouraged. A classic marker in stage 5 in the demonization of those in other classes, which typically produces one or more scapegoat classes, which are commonly believed to be the source of the problems. This leads to a drive to exclude, imprison, or destroy them. And I think that we can all agree, whether you're looking over at, Austria and Germany in Europe, where, honestly, there are things that I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, and I have to self-censor because I need to be here to guide you. And if I talk about everything I want to talk about, then I won't be able to do that. But I think that we can all see that there is a war brewing where certain groups are alienated from other groups. And that scares me very much.
For clarity, I'm also not taking sides politically or in regards to pandemic health choices. I am simply illustrating a point as to why I agree with Ray Dalio's research on historic cycles, something that I've been studying really on currencies since 1987. What I do stand for is community unification, not division.
I'd like you to listen to this tape that was recorded during the 75th anniversary, so in 2020, of the liberation of German Nazi concentration and extermination camp in Auschwitz.
In those early 1930s, you can read an inscription on the benches. Jews must not sit on these benches. You could say, it's unpleasant, it's not fair, it's not right. But after all, there are so many benches around. You can sit somewhere else. Of course you can. In that district, and that was a district that was inhabited by intellectuals, by the intelligentsia, German, of Jewish origin. Albert Einstein used to live there. Nelly Sachs, the Nobel Prize winner, a politician and industrialist, Walter Rathenau, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs. There was a swimming pool, and over its door an inscription read, Jews are forbidden to enter. You could say, well, pleasant this is not, but there are so many places in Berlin where you can take a bath or swim, so many lakes, canals, it's nearly like Venice. At the same time, you can read somewhere else, Jews must not belong to German singing associations. So what? All right, they want to sing, they want to make music. Let them just meet somewhere else, they will do their singing. All right. What comes up later is an order, really, more of an order than of an inscription. Non-Aryan children must not play with Aryan children, with the German children. All right, they'll play on their own. And then you read, We only sell bread and food to Jews after 5 p.m. Right? Less choice. This makes your life harder. But after all, after 5 p.m. you can still do your shopping. Now, I warn you, I'm getting used to a thought. That thought that someone may be excluded becomes mediated into our lives. The thought that somebody can be stigmatized, that someone may be alienated. And that's how it is done, step by step, slowly. People begin to see that this is something normal. Both victims and the perpetrators, the witnesses, those whom we in English call bystanders, those who see it become familiar, and they become acquainted with that thought, familiar with the idea that the minority that produced Einstein, Nelly Sachs, Henry Heine, Mendelssohn's, and many Nobelists, that it is different, that it can be pushed beyond the margin of the society, that they are different people, that they are alien people, that they are the people that carry germs, that cause pandemics. And this now is a horror. That's dangerous. This is where what may happen soon takes its origin. And let me tell you, if you consider that, and if we remember the words of Mr. President, power, power that at that time ran sly policy. For example, they met all the claims of workers. The 1st of May was never celebrated. All right, they gave you a day that was free from work. They introduced Kraftig heute, so a special holiday for workers. They could also fight unemployment. They knew how to play on the dignity of a nation. Germans move up from the shame of the Treaty of Versailles. Have your pride back. And that government also saw that people were slowly engulfed by this lack of sensitivity. They ceased to react to evil. And that was the moment when that government could speed up the process of evil. What came later was something that developed immediately. Jews could not get jobs, they could not emigrate, and then, quickly, Jews would be sent to ghettos, to Kaunas, to Riga, to my ghetto, the Litzmannstadt, the Łódź ghetto. Most people from there were later sent to Kulmhof, Chełmno on the Ner, where they were murdered in lorries with exhaust gases, and the rest will make their way to Auschwitz, where in a very modern way and manner they were murdered with Zyklon B in all those modern gas chambers. And here you see how the words of the president come true. Auschwitz did not fall suddenly from the skies. It was pittering, pattering in all those tiny steps. It was approaching until what happened here behind me did happen.
Moja córko,
My daughter, my granddaughter,
mojej córki, rówieśnicy mojej wnuczki,
peers of my daughter, peers of my granddaughter,
nie znać nazwiska
you do not have to know the name of Primo Levi. Primo Levi was one of the most famous inmates of this camp.
Primo Levi
Primo Levi
użył kiedyś takiego
once used that phrase,
to się wydarzyło,
this happened,
to znaczy, że się może wydarzyć,
which means that it may happen again,
wydarzyć wszędzie.
which means that it may happen anywhere, anywhere in this world.
His plea, do not be indifferent. We cannot afford to have this history repeat. We cannot afford to be indifferent. And that's for everybody, not just because you may be in this group or that group. If one group is set aside and targeted, everybody will be ultimately. We are in such a dangerous point. We cannot afford to be indifferent. We know that Biden's war on the virus becomes the war on the unvaccinated. We know that the Department of the Army is now separating vaccination order refusers. That's not even to mention all of the different race wars that are going on. Do you see? Can you see that this is the same thing that's happened historically? It scares the Hades out of me. I'm going to be honest with you. It scares me like crazy. So they've segregated two groups here. One is the one I just mentioned, and the other is the wealthy. And I'm not saying that some of these wealthy don't really deserve to be targeted, because this has not been a level playing field. But you and I together, if we are not indifferent, if all of us come together in community, maybe we can have a more fair system on the other side of this. Maybe we can prevent what is brewing. I don't mean that we can stop the currency regime shift. It has to. It's too broken down. It's too corrupted. It's too polluted. But it's all tied together, because your wealth, your money is your freedom. People bought their freedom by using gold and silver, by sewing it into the hems of their clothing. And that's how many people escaped what many others did not. Because the next piece is the loss of truth in the public domain. Not knowing what is true because of distortions in the media and propaganda increases as people become more polarized, emotional, and politically motivated. In stage 5, those who are fighting typically work with those in the media to manipulate people's emotions, to gain support, and to destroy the opposition. It is well recognized that this is now happening. The perceived truth in the media, both traditional and social, is lower than at any time in our lifetimes. A 2021 Gallup poll found that only 7% of Americans surveyed have a great deal of trust in the media. That compares with 72% who trusted the media in 1976. But there's only like 6 families that control all of the media. And we are forced into self-censorship. 62% of Americans say they have political views they're afraid to share. I hate to say this, I'm one of them. Are you? That's all part of an indication of where we are in this system. What are the implications? The large number from across demographic groups suggests withheld opinions may not simply be radical or fringe perspectives in the process of being socially marginalized. Instead, many of these opinions may be shared by a large number of people. If people feel they cannot discuss these important policy matters, this is the part that really scares me too. And I mean, I'm part of this, so I've got to work this through mentally just like you do. We all have to make these choices. If people feel they cannot discuss these important policy matters, such views will not have an opportunity to be scrutinized, understood, or reformed. Somehow, the media has determined, it's not really the media, but the media publicizes that there's only one way to deal with anything, and anybody that disagrees is shut down, is ostracized. I can't even tell you how disappointed I am in Joni Mitchell. Because, hey, she's from my generation. She went through 1971. She fought for freedom of speech. And she and others have now decided that we don't need freedom of speech. The only opinions that we're entitled to are the ones that agree with hers or those that are in power. I mean, she's not the only one, Neil Young and others. I'm so disappointed in them because they're my generation, and frankly, they know better. So rule following fades and raw fighting begins. When the causes that people are passionately behind are more important to them than the system for making decisions, the system is in jeopardy. When everyone has causes that they are fighting for and no one can agree on anything, the system is on the brink of civil war revolution. Does that sound like that's where we are to you? Because it sounds like that's where we are to me. And we're certainly there in money. Look at what's happening even there. Private police systems form to self-protection. And this is the size of the security services market worldwide just from 2011 to 2020. And this gray area is here in the US. And you can see how much that has grown. And it's the US that this is going to be a global issue. It is a global issue. It's not it's going to be. It is a global issue. The monetary system is global. And what's happening in the war against those that I've already pointed out, it's global. But you can see the growth in private security forces in the US is greater. We are not immune. This is not happening all over there, and it won't happen here. Because as you heard from that Auschwitz survivor, it can happen anywhere. And it is happening. We have to protect our children and our grandchildren. We have to. We have to protect and come back to democracy for them. Because these are the proof of what he's saying is true in current times. We have that division. We have that warfare. We are on the brink of a civil war. Let's be on the right side of history and fight for real democracy and fight for good money. Why in the world would you want those that got us into this situation to remain in power so they can do it again, and they can do it to our children and our grandchildren? Not okay with me. Because if you count on, if you believe the lies of the fiat money system, by design, inflation robs you of your wealth. By design. Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes the laws. I'm not political, because the reality is politics are there as a distraction and a way to legalize the theft of the bankers. That's what their function is. It's not to fight inflation, good God. Were we not warned by Powell himself, who said, oh, now we're going to target average inflation? When he said that, I said, get ready for inflation. So today it came out 7.5%. And that's just only the aggregate. You know, if you're buying food, it's higher, shelter, medical, education. It's all way higher than that. But they count the things that you don't buy. So there you have it. By a continuing process of inflation, government can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. This is baked into the system. This is why you need physical gold and physical silver, which is decentralized, private, portable wealth that is proven to protect you from inflation and also from crisis protection, which we need desperately now. I know you've seen this purchasing power graph from the Federal Reserve himself. 3 cents left, and it keeps going down. And it's going to go down faster and faster. The only thing holding it together is your confidence that you don't believe the dollar can go away. When it goes into a digital dollar, programmable money, and you sit there and you watch your principal evaporate when you haven't bought a thing, you're going to go out and spend it. So I'm telling you right now, you need to convert into physical gold and silver outside of the system in your possession now, while you still can. And thank you for manipulating the price so cheaply so that you can still buy it at a bargain like they are. Because this march to zero is relentless, and it's happened over 4,800 times, 100% of the time. And look, it's happening again. This isn't something that's going to happen. This is something that has happened to you since the day you were born. At what point do you say no more? I'm sitting here and I'm telling you for myself, no more. Please get ready now. If you haven't already, get it done. We are running out of time. You could do what a number of other people have been doing. Hold private global wealth. Ta-dum! This is a chart on just January sales of American Eagle gold coins, and it was the one that we just finished because we're early in February, the third highest on record. What was higher? 1999, and actually 2021 January was higher. What does this tell you? That the knowing public, those that understand money, those that can see the crisis that is unfolding, not something I'm waiting for, it is unfolding now. They are running to the safety of gold. Now, you can hold any kind of gold, and frankly, you'll be in the right church, but desperate governments do desperate things. My uncle showed me how he could hold thousands of ounces of gold legally and use them in the normal marketplace when it was illegal to hold more than 5 ounces. That's the collectible gold. That is in the category that the elites wrote into for themselves in 1933. That defies eminent domain laws because it's less than 2% of all the gold that exists. Less than 2%. I want to be in the category of the elites. And you know how you're in the category of the elites? You can't hold it in an IRA. Oh, the gold content is all standardized. Why can't you hold it in an IRA? You can hold lots of things in an IRA. You can hold real estate in an IRA. You can hold cryptocurrencies in an IRA. You can hold gold and silver in an IRA. But you can't hold collectible gold in an IRA. That's the kind I own. That's the only kind I own. Do you trust this government? They've been robbing you of your wealth your entire life, but now here we are at the end of this cycle and they're going to go, oh, wait, oh, no. You get to keep it. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to do whatever they need to do to attempt to stay in power. But frankly, with the world on the verge of civil war and revolution, well, this great reset becomes a reality. I've been talking about the reset since 2009 after Christine Lagarde, in an interview on Bloomberg, probably used the term reset about 29 times in like a 20-minute interview. And I went, holy crap, here it is. The World Economic Forum have picked up on it. The World Bank, the IMF, the Federal Reserve. Everybody is now talking about a reset. So how does everything happen? Slowly at first, like a frog in a pot of water, and then fast. The Great Reset. Look at all of the things that they have in mind to reset and restructure. But here are the key ones. Shaping this economic recovery. Who do you think they are going to be shaping it for? Oh, all of us, but who's going to benefit? Because, hey, you will own nothing and you will be happy. You won't be happy when you own nothing. I guarantee you won't be happy. Get gold so you can own stuff, and then that can't guarantee happiness, but you can take care of your family and you can have all that love around you. Anybody that you want to take care of. If you take care of yourself first, if you lay in your gold and silver like I have, I've made sure that no matter what happens, if I've done my job well, and I've certainly tried, my children, my grandchildren, my grandchildren's children, on and on and on, will have all of the choices open to them. Redesigning those social contracts. Well, yeah, do we have a retirement crisis? Yes, we do. Just fake making the stock market and the real estate market and the bond market. Well, bond market's no longer going up. That's the end of that bull market. Can make it look like these are like retirement plans are funded, but they are funded on smoke and mirrors. And when this domino falls, everything falls with it. But let's revitalize that global cooperation, because certainly we see what happened with the supply chain. Yeah, the corporations did great, didn't they? Because they could go into any country who had the cheapest labor and take advantage of that, so that income and wealth inequality gap could just grow wider and wider and wider and wider. and taking us into a new form of fiat money that they can control the value of with the push of a button. They can track every single penny you have coming in. They can track every single penny you have going out. They can pull the taxes out of your account. And hey, if everything you own is also on smart technology, you don't make your car payment. I mean, this is their example, not mine. They just push a button, can lock you out of your car, and hell, they can drive it away. They can lock you out of your home. I don't mind debt as long as I can pay it off in a heartbeat if I choose to or if I need to. I am not keen on lots of leverage if you don't have the ability to pay it off. That's also the point of gold. That's part of the strategy. It's a big part of the strategy. And I'm not alone in this. What have we been seeing? We've been seeing that global central banks bought 82% more gold year over year. Think they might know something you don't? Here, look at the Royal Bank of India. 77-ton gold buy is the second highest in its history. What do you think they're preparing for? Because their global reserves of physical gold are the highest level that they have ever been since 1992. And after 1992, what did they do? They went about creating all of these gold sales, whether they were derivative sales, etc. Remember, the Bank for International Settlements, before they changed the way they accounted for it, of course, 62,000 ounces of digital gold for every 1 ounce of physical. Thank you for manipulating the price because I'm doing what you're doing. I'm buying as much as I can, as quickly as I can. And Herman Cain, may he rest in peace, he was absolutely right when he said that we need a dollar as good as gold. But the dollar is not as good as gold. Gold is as good as gold. You hold it, you own it outright, it runs no counterparty risk, it runs no political risk. It will protect you from inflation. It will protect you from global civil war. So Ray Dalio tells us that we're in stage 5. And I've just shown you why he said that. I 100% agree. The next is stage 6. And that's when we go into revolution and a civil war. That's when we go into hyperinflation. That's when we'll find those, I don't know how many, but overnight resets of the currency. We are that close. This is why I've been urging you to get ready now and call us so that we can help you put a plan together and execute it. Please, please, please share this video. This is probably one of the most important videos that I've ever done. Look at the evidence. We are in stage 5. The next stage is 6. The next stage is hyperinflation. The next stage is revolution. Let's talk about this. Leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, and share this video. Until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.